And we are heading live on Skills Not Pills, and I believe we might be live already. Just going to check and see. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday. I certainly am. I'm here with my friend Charmaine Hammond, and so what could be better than that? Welcome, Charmaine.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Carrie.
Really excited to have you on because you have such a fascinating story. Your background is like, what haven't you done is the question that people might be asking after this interview. What hasn't Charmaine done? So this talk is about resilience and bouncing forward. And I can't think of a better person to have this talk with, Charmaine Hammond. She's everything. Well, I mean, how do I even describe you, Charmaine? She helps people raise a dream. She has a business called Raise a Dream, and it helps you to raise your dream, like your passion business. And that's what she does now, but that's not how she started.
That's right.
But you have been in the business of changing people's lives for more than 25 years. She has been a mediator, a correctional officer, and worked in psychiatry and mental health organizations prior to the work she does now as a business owner. And one thread was consistent throughout her career and the 21 past years as a business owner, teaching people skills to manage life's challenges, resilience, and living one's best life, no matter what the circumstances are. She's authored 5 books. She's a speaker for more than 300,000 people around the world. And she's passionate about making a difference in the world through kindness, acceptance, and respect. And they're just, Charmaine, you're just such a good-hearted, amazing person. And I'm really glad that thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. And I just want to say, Carrie, I love the work you're doing with this movement. And it's so timely with everything that's going on in the world. And I know from working for many years with families and individuals in mental health, psychiatry, and corrections that so much of what we can do to support people is to help them develop the skills they need in life to get through those tough times.
It's so key. And you've seen people probably at their, like, quote, worst, right? Like at their most challenged.
Yeah. So, certainly when I worked in corrections, I started out working in an adult jail and really found my passion working with young offenders in treatment facilities and custody facilities. And so these were 13 to 17-year-olds who were often away from home for the very first time, and it's in a jail. And, one of the things that really struck me and the team that I worked with was how many young people were being medicated. And what we started to know by seeing these youths 24 hours a day for 3 years was that often what they needed was skills, life skills, coping skills, and a healthy environment to grow and flourish. And it was so joyful for me, Carrie, watching the psychiatrists and the counselors that supported us working with the youth when they could take some of these kids off the medication that they no longer needed because they had acquired the skills they needed to cope with things in life. And it was like all these new people were emerging, and it was pretty incredible to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, what an amazing demographic to be working with, those young people who, I have an 18-year-old, I know you know that. So, and he's been through his set of challenges, as every teenager has.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that is a time of life when I look back on it now, the potential is to be like starting your journey. Like, yeah, I'm in freedom. Yay. I get to like chart my course. I get to live my life. I get to pursue my dreams. I get to get out there. That's the potential. But like oftentimes that's not where kids are at during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the same thing when I worked I worked for a number of years working with high-risk kids in group homes, and I actually opened up a drop-in center. That was one of my jobs. It was the most joyful job in my life that we opened up a drop-in center for young people ages 11 to 17. And so I called it Youth Teen Drop-in Center, and nobody came. Like, it was empty. And one of the kids felt bad for me, and he said, I think you should have a naming contest. I mean, kids have such great ideas. So he said, why don't we have a contest? So we had a community contest, ran it in the newspaper, and the top vote was the Twilight Zone. So and they all came to the Twilight Zone. But what was really interesting for me, so coming from corrections, a really structured environment, to a very open environment that was just anyone in the community can come that's between ages 11 and 17. It's open for all. What I started to notice was how the youth supported one another, and how when one of them had a gap in skills, I remember one little guy, one of my, just this, you know how people get into your heart? This little guy got into my heart, and he just had zero anger management skills. He just went from zero to out of control so quickly. And we were attempting to, you know, work with him and develop skills. And it was one of the older teenagers, I'd say he was about 16. And he just kind of took this little guy under his wing and taught him how to not be a goof, was his words. And he taught him how to manage his anger. And I mean, this young guy, I ran into this little boy who was 10 at the time, ran into him when he was 20 some odd, 21, 23, and he had graduated college and university. But again, he needed those skills. And what that taught me was that our mentors in our life, the people who make a difference, our teachers, are sometimes so close to us that we don't even notice. And it's not always the adults in our life that make the impact. Young people are incredible teachers as well.
That is kind of amazing. Thinking about that, thinking about the impact of your older siblings, and certainly the impact of other kids at school and whatever they're doing and whatever their mentality is, which is kind of the importance of making sure that there's open dialogue. So how do you, I mean, in that demographic, in that age group, 13 to 17, how do you get those kids to talk?
Oh, you know, that was one of our biggest challenges. And I, you know, I'm going to go back to something that I learned: drive time and dinner time. So when we had youth in custody facilities, I mean, they couldn't leave. So we had their captive attention. But when I was working with youth in community programs in the drop-in center, I found that anytime that we had a gathering, so we had a snack time, and it was a great way to facilitate conversation. And also, we'd often take the young people on outings. So they were in a moving vehicle, and I had the ability to turn the radio off or on, and we would have I would create conversation games to get the youth talking. And I went back to a lesson I learned from my grade 9 teacher. She used to challenge us to have debates and healthy conversations, and to pick a topic that we didn't care about or that we weren't attached to the outcome. And so it kind of created lively debate, but what we were doing was actually learning from each other. So fast forward many years, when I was a family mediator, I used to use those same kind of tips with the families I was working with, and to say to really treasure dinner time and drive time, because they're the two moments, especially with teenagers, when, you know, they're building their independence and they're exploring friendships and moving further away from hanging out with mom and dad and grandma and granddad. Drive time and dinner time are some of the best times to actually, and those moments where you're walking from the soccer field to the car, you know, instead of hopping on your cell phone, just being attentive and focused, and treasuring those little blips of time that we have. And I think those are some of the most important things we can do. And now with technology, and we're busy in our lives, you know, we often finish a task and you know, turn on our cell. And I'm guilty of that. I catch myself. Actually, my husband catches me too doing that. And he'll say, you know, is that glued to your hand? Or
Oh, well, as a business owner, I can totally understand how that happens.
Right. So just being attentive and being present and available is one way to get young people to talk. The other way is to ask open-ended questions. And this is really valuable. When I was a mediator many years ago, that's a big part of mediation, is getting people to talk. And we have a tendency as humans to actually ask questions in a close-ended way, which means we ask questions like, did you, could you, will you, won't you? And the answer is kind of yes or no. Whereas if we ask questions that start with W, who, what, where, when, why, and also how, it elicits conversation, because you can't just say no or yes to that kind of question. So you get insight into where people are at and what's going on with them.
Now, what happens with teens who don't want to open up? Like they just don't feel like talking, or they can't seem to access the words. Like they don't know how to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, I love how you said they don't know how to access the words, because there is a tendency for us to see what is perceived as resistance. So a young person often saying things like, I don't know, whatever, and shutting the conversation down. And as adults, and I saw this all the time when I was a family mediator, the adults, the parents in the life, got immediately frustrated. and then started either, blaming or so saying things like, you never open up. And so one of the things that we need to do is allow people time to get their words, to actually process what's going on, because not just young people, adults too, sometimes can't formulate a way to explain what's happening to them in a way that the person listening can understand. So one way to do that is to ask sort of mini questions. And if they say, I don't know, or, they kind of do that, don't give up. Because I think as adults, we often give up far too quickly, and we move from listening to sort of frustration. So, and ask them if they're okay to talk now, or would 10 minutes from now be better? Sometimes people just need a bit of space to formulate it. There's other people that can actually find their words, as you said, Carrie, if they write them. So I had one family I worked with years ago, and they really became teachers for me. And they had a teenager. He was, I think, 16 at the time, in lots of trouble, and the physicians were exploring putting him on a sort of a variety of medications. The parents really wanted to work with him if he didn't need the medication. And he struggled with communication and immediately got angered if no one understood him. And so what we found is he loved to write. He was a poet. I'm surprised he doesn't have a book out yet, or maybe he does under a pen name, but he was a poet. He was a beautiful writer. So we would say to him, how about you go off and write down what's going on for you, and let's come back in 15 minutes. So there's always that commitment to come back and writing it down. And I've also had now that we're in the age of technology, because that back then we weren't, I've also had a couple parents say to me that their kids made them a video, just a little video of how they were feeling, and then gave it to their mom and dad to watch. And so I think there's ways that we can invite conversation as we learn to see how people communicate.
That is so great. It's giving me ideas for my 18-year-old. Because he's an artist, and so I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe he could draw us a picture of how he's feeling.
Beautiful.
And then we can kind of get an idea. Because see, what I notice happens in my case, because I'm a go-getter.
Right.
And I don't understand people that can't find words, or that take a long time to make a decision, or that don't know the answer. Like, that doesn't compete for me, because I've just always been that person that's like, bam, I just know.
Get it done, right.
So for me, and I think different personality types. So when you watch it happen, like, the whole family will be like, ask him a question, and then we'll wait like all of maybe 5 seconds. And then somebody will jump in. Well, I think that I think he's doing this. And then I think he's doing this. He's in the room, but we're all like, I think this is what's going on for him. No, I think it's this. Oh yeah, I agree with you on that. And then we're all debating like what's going on for him. And he's sitting right there.
And he's right there. Yeah.
He's like, I don't need to say anything, because everybody else is going to speak for me. I'm
right.
Like, yeah. And I think we do that to our kids. I mean, I'm pretty conscious, and I still do it to my kids.
And we do it in adult relationships too. There's many people in relationships with a significant other, even in workplaces, where we do those exact same things. So, resilience and communication and learning to help people find their words is sort of this ongoing journey. It doesn't just stop. And one of the things that I've learned from working with thousands and thousands of clients, especially as a mediator, was that patterns repeat themselves in relationships. So it's sort of like, as an adult, when you go back to, and you meet up with somebody that you haven't seen for many years that you used to work with, or a family member, sometimes we fall back into how we responded in that relationship at that very moment of time.
Yeah, that is a tricky thing to watch out for.
Yeah, very much so.
Because, we are in the transformation business. So Skills Not Pills is about transformation, transformation of the patterns and the energies that are underlying the patterns, so that we end up a different person at the end of the day, and we don't need to cope with a solution. We're just done with that thing, whatever that is.
Right.
So, knowing that this is a transformation program, what are some of the things that you've noticed you've worked with so many clients throughout the years, all these kids and juvenile delinquents and these families? Like, what are some of the things you noticed that the successful ones did to transition out of the situation they were in?
Oh, there's so many things that when I look back, whether they were youth that I worked with, or adults, or even clients when I was doing workplace mediation, one of the things that people did is the opportunity just to forgive the mistakes they've made, or to acknowledge, oh, I didn't show up the way I wanted to. You know, there's little things that go on in our life that are not catastrophic. They're not high drama, but yet they impact us so deeply. And so being able to forgive yourself and put it aside. So that doesn't mean forgive yourself and then still keep the drama of it alive. It's, you know, forgive yourself. One of the young people said, you have to forgive yourself, put it in a box, and then put the box away. And this what came from, I don't know how old he was, 12, 13. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. You know, this was a child who spoke in metaphors and visual images. So forgiveness. Another thing is that not to let issues linger. Whatever relationship it is if it's with your kids, with workplace issues, with our significant others, there's a great quote, conflict is not like wine. It doesn't improve with age. And that's by Judge SD. And I love that quote, because conflict and issues, if we don't deal with them quickly, they just take on a whole life of their own. And then you've got far too much to deal with. So dealing with issues as they come up. And I think the other thing, and it's probably one of the most difficult for all of us to do, is to have those, what I call difficult conversations, the conversations that matter most and are mostly avoided. So that might be feedback. That might be telling somebody how their behavior impacted you, or that you had an expectation that wasn't met. But having those conversations and making sure you allow time in that dialogue to nurture the relationship, so people don't walk away feeling wounded or that a relationship has been destroyed. And that's really important. And check in, make sure things are okay still.
I love that. As you were talking about speaking up, I was thinking about how many women end up with throat issues, like thyroid issues. And those are all like your throat area.
Yes.
And you're not speaking.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I actually was talking with somebody the other day about how to speak up and claim, you know, your voice in a relationship. And this person was telling me things that were very similar to how I felt when I was in my former marriage. It's like, well, I have to pick my battles. I have to, you know, I can bring that up, but then there's going to be a cost.
Yeah.
You know, the person's going to lose their temper, or they're going to act out, or I'm going to, you know, they're never going to forget that I brought that up. Yeah. So these are reasons why people don't speak. But what people don't realize, I think, is that by not speaking, your throat actually gets clogged up with the unspoken words and energies and emotions. And you kind of feel like disempowered, and that disempowerment leads itself through lots of areas of your life. Yeah. Like that glass ceiling gets lower and lower and lower, you know, for what you're willing to do. So getting the courage to speak is so important.
Yeah. I love that you've connected that with health, with our physical health, because I used to see that a lot, especially when I worked in the hospital setting, where people were coming in and the level of stress they had was enormous, and hanging on to things that happened, and they didn't have a way to facilitate transformation for themselves, or they didn't have a support group. They didn't have the right supports, and they were carrying so much. It almost, Carrie, I remember one conversation when the person came in the room, and this was a lovely, lovely lady, one of the most kind, generous people, biggest hearts I'd ever met. She was so wounded. And even now I'm talking about it, I'm sort of getting goosebumps and pricklies on my arm, because she impacted me so much. And when she would come in a room, it felt like she had duffel bags being pulled behind her of stuff. It felt so heavy. And I remember thinking, I just want to make it go away. I was uncomfortable in the moment because there was heaviness in the room. And I was having to then deal with my own reaction to what was going on. And over the period of time, she sort of unpacked the duffel bag. And I remember when she was discharged, that she walked in the room and there was nothing, like there was no duffel bag, there was no heavy energy, but it took her a long time. And what I learned from her is that we all have things in our life that go on. And whether it's family issues, relationship issues, money, health, whatever that is. But if we don't do the process of working things through, exactly what you said, Carrie, happens. The impact on our health is incredible, but it also then impacts our relationships as well.
Yeah, and relationship stress is actually one of the leading causes of illness.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because when you have relationship stress, you don't feel supported or heard or cared about. All those things lead to dis-ease within your being, you know? I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's actually that simple.
You know, it is that simple, but it's difficult at the same time. One of the things that I've had to really pay attention to over the years, for me, especially when I was working in very volatile, high stress situations, is I had to learn to really read my body and to be observant, because I noticed that I was often, way back in my career, missing the signs that my stress was raising and my resilience was going down. And so one day somebody said, "Charmaine, you look like you've got no shoulders." And I said, "What?"
Uh-oh.
And they said, "This is what you look like."
My husband's always going like this to
me. I know. I keep on
like,
but I was working in a very, very stressful time, and I walked into the mirror. I kind of thought, oh, whatever. Was in my mind. Walked in the mirror, and this is how I looked. I had so much stress, it looked like my shoulders had gained 10 inches on them. But I was completely unaware. You know, I was unaware that I was getting headaches a lot at work. And so my mentor at the time, John Bromley, who was just a phenomenal human being, really helped me understand that the way we can show up in life and not only support other people, but also bring our best version of us to the world, is to really be self-aware and present and notice what's going on. And I was working with a little guy. This is how simple this can be when you say simple. I was working with a little guy who was 10, and we were working on anger management skills for him. And we're doing a program called Volcano in My Tummy, which is a really great program for anger management. It's great. So there was a little picture, like a silhouette of a body. And I said to him, you know, take whatever color resonates for you. And in the body, draw where you first feel anger in whatever color you think it is. So what was really interesting is on the body where the stomach would be, he drew this big red circle. And then he drew a big red square on the forehead on this picture. And he said, when I'm feeling angry, he was able to say, when I get angry, the first sign I get is my stomach feels weird, or he said tummy, and my head feels like I've got a headache. So we were able to work with him to be able to identify that reaction that's going on physiologically before the anger outburst. And the moment I knew he got it was I was in the grocery store one day. This is probably 6 months later. And all I hear is, hey, Charmaine. And I recognize the little voice. And he says, I have no more volcanoes. They're completely gone.
That's pretty awesome.
So what that taught me is he was a little guy who didn't need medication. He needed to be able to identify exactly and be self-aware. And then he had the tools, you know, he had people in his life who helped him develop coping skills. So
instead of making it bad, instead of like, oh, that's bad, don't do that.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, that's an anger volcano.
Yeah.
And then it's like a game, you know, It's like, oh, there's an anger volcano on my tummy. You know, it's like, yeah. And, you know, here's the cool part, people, is that Chinese medicine knows that the stomach is the anger channel. So isn't that interesting?
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Wow. I didn't know that until now. That's so interesting.
So you actually digest it. You're like, the bladder is fear. So if you guys have urinary tract issues or things like that, could be fear related. So I love Chinese medicine for that reason, because it explains a lot of things that you're like, well, my stomach gets upset when I'm feeling angry. Well, that's because the stomach is anger. That's what it is. That's where.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
It is cool. That I did not know. And this was many years ago. So thank you, Carrie.
He knew it at 10 years old.
He knew it. 10 years old.
That's where I feel it. Your body tells you. Your body tells you exactly where it is. I love that you did this work with little kids. I think that's so great.
Oh, it was so, you know, working with I worked with little kids from ages 4 up to teenagers. And I'll tell you, they are some of the best teachers in life, because they can take a very complex situation and make it very understandable. They're so brilliant. You know, I love watching kids are some of the best examples of resilience. If you think about a 2-year-old, I don't have children, but I've worked with thousands of them. But if you think of a 2-year-old and they're learning to crawl and then walk and they pull themselves up on that coffee table, they fall backwards, they cry. What do? They
get
get
back up
back
and
up.
do it again.
Exactly. And so resilience is kind of like that. It's something that we have to continually practice. And I think of resilience like a bank account. You've got to keep putting into it to have what you need available for you when you need it. If you stop putting into the bank account, there's no money left. And resilience is like that. If you stop nurturing your resilience every day, there's nothing there for you when you need it most.
I love that. So that's kind of one of your tools with all of these really high stress jobs that you've taken out of your life. That because being an entrepreneur is one of the most stressful jobs. Being a correctionals officer, definitely stressful. Working with, you know, high trauma youth, definitely stressful. So you've got some coping skills for creating some resilience within yourself that you keep going and keep bouncing forward through all these different opportunities.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur now, I have 2 businesses, and one of the key things for me is I love what I do. And I have a great team. The people I work with are phenomenal. So that adds so much to my resilience account. The other thing for me, Carrie, is music. I learned that when stress starts to, if I feel out of sorts or a little bit of stress, or in those moments where I kind of can't find my footing, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you kind of move from task to task and you're putting out energy and nothing's getting done. In those minutes, I stop and I put on music. And the music is usually ones that I know all the words for. So they're 80s songs, Tom Petty, the 80s music where I know all the words, and I sing. And, you know, wouldn't want to do a concert for anyone, but there's something for me that happens about singing. And I love what you said about, you know, that your voice, because I actually feel a release and a calmness when I sing. The other thing for me is fresh air. Just going outside for 5 minutes is like putting a lot of money in the bank for me. It's like putting a lot of resources in that resilience bank. And the other thing is being with people. My stress builds if I'm isolated. So if I have a day, for example, where I'm just head down in my work and I'm not connecting with people, I need to be with people in some way, on the phone, talk to the neighbor, something to feel connection.
And so you guys can also tell that Charmaine has spent a lot of time getting to know herself really well. And so she, you know, not everybody is built to be feeling better around people. Some people feel better alone. And so this is the point where, you know, self-awareness is one of the key concepts we're teaching in the Skills Not Pills movement, is self-awareness, knowing who you are and knowing your signs, your tells, you know, kind of like you're playing poker. Like, what are your tells that you need, that you're getting, like, you know, your ears up around, you know, are your shoulders at your ears? Maybe you need to take a rest and go dance, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, well, tell us a little bit about your business. I know we're about to wrap it up, but I want people to know what you do now, because what you do now is, I mean, you guys, that's a pretty cool history, right? Like, who does all that in one lifetime? Charmaine Hammond. Now tell them what you're doing in your life. It's pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have 2 businesses. So Hammond International, I speak corporately for workplaces around creating respectful workplaces, helping employees and leaders learn communication and conflict resolution skills. And I've been doing that for 21 years. That's my business. That's what I've been doing for a long time. And then my big passion is also Raise a Dream, which I co-own with Rebecca Kirstein. And I mean, we have so much fun working together. It doesn't feel like work. And Rebecca and I help entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, coaches raise their dreams, support their learning about how to build collaborations and partnerships with other people, and how to get sponsorship. So what that business does, my husband, you know, often comments how when I'm working on projects with Raise a Dream, he can just feel the energy. I mean, it's exactly what I love to do. And I think that's part of why I you know, honestly don't really get a lot of stress now. And I think it's sort of, I've learned to have a good support system. So people tell me, Charmaine, you're getting stressed, and I listen. I know myself exactly, look in the mirror. You know, Chris, my husband, will come to me sometimes. just do this. It's like,
My
oh,
husband's like, have you breathed today? I'm like, oh yeah.
yeah, breathing. That's kind of important.
Because I get deer in the headlights and I stop breathing. I breathe really shallow, and he's like, belly breaths. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice though, Carrie.
Yeah, because I could get like panicked, you know, all those years in front of the keyboard working on projects and deadlines. And I lean in. The closer I get, the more stressed I get. The closer into the keyboard, as if like that's going to make it speed up. Just lean back. Do it in style, you know?
I love that. Well, and when you're looking at the recording, Carrie, I love this because looking at you from what we see, there's you, gorgeous Carrie, and these beautiful wings of the butterfly. So
it's like coming out of my,
exactly.
my angel wings.
Your angel wings, exactly.
Well, so you know, and you guys, pulling back the curtain a little bit, Charmaine has been helping me for the last year and a half with guidance and mentorship and inspiration and tools and things like that to launch my dream, which of course is to be of service in the world. And I didn't know what that was even a year and a half ago. I had no idea. And then this came in. It was like, oh, skills, not pills. That's cool. So
very cool.
And we're getting ready to launch the membership program. I think I told you that, but yeah.
Awesome.
Really excited. We have lots of great experts coming on board, including Yasin Chowdhury, who's a MD and holistic psychiatrist, and Laura Batista, who is a nutritional and biomedical facilitator. There's all these cool technologies coming out. We've got Jamie Guyden, who's a naturopath and MD for 12 years, and now she's a naturopath. So like there's like some incredible people joining this movement to showcase lots of examples of healing and transforming through life's challenges so that we don't need to cope with these strategies anymore, that we can just be free of that and move through life in a whole different way. So pretty exciting.
Wonderful. That's super exciting. I just love this, Carrie, and I've enjoyed so much watching all the interviews that you've been doing, and just we were saying offline before we got started, just so many different perspectives, and that's what I love. I mean, really, Skills Not Pills, the movement brings it. There's something for everybody, depending on your personality and how you learn best and what you resonate with. So I love that you've been so expansive in the guests that you're bringing on.
Yeah, I love to share inspiration, and people, you know, there's a billion, I don't know, 8 billion people on the planet, 8 billion people, however many perspectives on healing, and those are cool stories. So I figure I can do this movement for quite a while because I got 8 billion people I can interview, you know?
That's awesome. Love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And if you want to check out Charmaine's business, you can go to raiseadream.com.
Yeah.
If you've got a dream to raise, and if you got a corporate gig, what's the corporate website?
CharmaineHammond.com.
CharmaineHammond.com. Well, that's easy. And I'll put that in the notes for this broadcast. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks, Charmaine, for coming on the show. And love you guys. Love what you're doing. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Carrie.
Bye, everybody.